everybody. Welcome
You say
back.
hi, everybody, but we just logged in. There's no one here yet.
There's some people here. There are 4 individuals present. Do not discount our lovely, punctual audience.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, everybody. All 5 of you. Welcome to Century Guild Salon and Happy New Year. I'm happy to be kicking off the first salon of 2023 with you all. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Thomas Negovan.
Getting my water ready.
Getting your water ready. Yeah. At the last minute, we switched spots, so we're in a bit of a tizzy, but we're.
Oh my gosh, there's 11 people.
There's 11 people. That's right.
So we didn't advertise anything tonight because it's the new year. And we kind of, there's a lot of things that are going to be changing in this coming year. And also too, just, with, I had COVID and then got a terrible cold/flu. And so for the last 5 weeks, everything's just been so crazy. And it's just taken everything just to kind of get the basic work done. And so we realized a couple weeks ago, and then a week ago, and then 3 days ago, where'd our screen go? That we didn't have a topic for tonight. And so the thing that we wanted to do and weren't able to technically figure out is we were going to try to make it, hi everybody, is how to do kind of some call-in stuff. But there's a few things that we're going to do this year. One is that and I was looking for this right before we came on. We had the prototype. There's a passport that we've designed to kind of be like a book club, like a reading club thing. And so that's something that we're going to be launching in a couple weeks. And it's going to all go through the Patreon as the hub for that. So the Patreon is just $1 a month. It's the minimum that you can charge. and I look at it that we're paying that price to use their platform. If we've had anything that was free, that was the same type of enclosed garden, we would use that. But in the absence of that, so we're not doing it as a money-making thing. It's just meant to be something where there's no ads, it's not owned by, it's not like Facebook, where if you do a Facebook group, things might not pop up. It's definitely like meant to be a separate destination. We're also trying to figure out how to attach like Discord or something to it, if that's what we're going to do. But we're working all that out in the next couple weeks. And then the biggest thing this year is going to be Le Pater. And so I don't know if you have the big book yet. Kat, you want to hold that up? So if you haven't seen it yet, and this also is, for people watching the video later.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hit you with that.
So this is the gigantic, enormous, let's hold it up to Kat for scale. So it's gigantic. And so this was obviously a very, very expensive book to produce. And the thing that we'd wanted to do for a long time is create a smaller edition. So this is a much more manageable size.
Hold them up together.
Yeah. I mean, so, obviously there's still the giant one if you want that. But this is, so we had printed these, got just enough copies to fulfill the Kickstarter, and the entire print run was terribly damaged. And we were able to get just enough books with, I think, 40 extra copies to be able to fulfill the Kickstarter. And it took 12 months to get these back. We just got these a couple weeks ago, maybe right before Christmas. And so it's an expanded edition. What's the retail on this? Is it $50? $49. $49. Mm-hmm. So this is the big thing that we're going to push this year. And the big thing for me with this is that it's not like, hey, this is the thing we're here to sell. But if you're a fan of Art Nouveau, if you're a fan of symbolism, if you're a fan of mysticism, this is Alphonse Mucha considered this his masterpiece, and it probably was 20 years of research. And the entire point of the book is to celebrate Mucha's idea that we're all connected, and that whether you look at that through the lens of Christian mysticism or naturalism or Art Nouveau or any other kind of art movement, that just the basic idea that we can be the best human beings that we can be by being tuned into ourselves and of service to our world is something that, when I understood that this was what Mucha's pride was, it resonated really, really heavily with me, both visually, because obviously it's gorgeous, but also metaphysically. And so one of the things that happened with this book that was really beautiful is that as it made the rounds of the universe, people I was getting incredible feedback. And most of the people who were my influences when I was young, that got me into the ideas of Art Nouveau or the ideas of mysticism and all of this weaving together, said really nice things about the book. So we've got great quotes from Roger Dean, who, if you're not familiar with his art, he did the Yes album covers that were I mean, this is horrible to say, but if you've seen Avatar, you've seen his work. When I watched the movie Avatar, I was so excited, and I thought at the end of this movie, it's going to say designed by Roger Dean. And of course it didn't. There was a lawsuit, but the floating islands, the palette, all of that is Roger Dean. And so in the late 60s, in the early 70s, and all through the early 80s, he was just completely inescapable visually. And a huge influence on me. And he said that this is one of his favorite books. And then if you are a fan of fantasy at all, Michael Moorcock is the writer who in 1961 took the metaphysical idea of the multiple universes and put it into a setting that he called the multiverse, in the same way that all of these superhero movies are doing. So anything that you're enjoying with Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or any of that, if you trace that back in popular culture, the origin point is 1961, is Michael Moorcock. And so he wrote a really, really glowing introduction. So to have a book that says Introduction by Michael Moorcock is just kind of floors me. And so the reason that we're going to focus so much on this book this year is because it's so dense, it's so rich in subject matter, whether it's sociologically, whether it's metaphysically, whether it's just the Art Nouveau coming into fruition at the World's Fair in Paris 1900. There's just so much happening with it that it warrants all of that. And historically, something that I'd recognize is that what we do is we're constantly making things and not really taking the time to explore them or celebrate them. And when we started doing these salons, part of it was to kind of take a look back a little bit and do that. But because we've got a huge palette of these books now, this is just the big thing that we really want to focus on this year is Alphonse Mucha is the convergence of mysticism and symbolism, the kind of apex of Art Nouveau being the idea of our relationship to nature, to the planet, to each other, and getting into kind of some of the philosophy behind Art Nouveau is, Mucha was the quintessential Art Nouveau artist. You can make arguments for people like Georges Dufour and, probably other names if I was thinking about it for a minute, but to pull it right back to Mucha, I say Georges Dufour, but people don't know him. Like you see Mucha and you immediately know that's Art Nouveau, so much so that they called it Mucha style in Paris in the day. So the main thing then, so for tonight for the salon was just that I think that some of this is we're going to figure out how some of these things are going to move kind of into that Patreon universe, as far as the live things that we're doing like this. These are mostly conversations that we're having in the coming week or 10 days as Kat prepares her pitch to me of how we're doing this
and figure out how we
and what we're
get
doing
ourselves together. So yes, I also want to elaborate on what Tom was saying about the Patreon community and about really putting a spotlight on Le Pater. For those of you who haven't joined us before, we say this, I feel like, every salon, but the spirit of the salon came from missing having a physical gallery space where after a show or during an event, we could hang out with the people who loved art and who loved books and talk about these amazing, inspiring subjects and topics and just get to know each other. And
don't look at me.
It seemed
look at them.
I'm connecting with you. I'm getting to know you. And so it just makes sense to broaden that community and what we're able to do as far as interacting and discussing.
I think to clarify broadening the community, I think the idea is just that we haven't really done anything to kind of make the salon bigger, because it's just been something that we just do to our mailing list and just our social media. And we cherish the smallness of the salons, which is kind of one of the things that Patreon is going to help us protect. But we also do want to widen what we're doing in terms of, it kind of is that catch-22. It's like when you talk about, oh, I love this band, when I used to go see them in a small club, but you want to celebrate when a band has a bigger audience. And so we've not put the time into, we've sold thousands of the hardcover on this, which is beautiful, but we haven't done any effort to join these people together. We've just kind of been like if we had the gallery, okay, the door's unlocked. If you want to come in, you can. But we haven't really been as inviting, like having the sign with lights on it or something as we have been. So I think that to kind of clarify what she meant by that. So a lot of it is we celebrate the intimacy. The Patreon is going to help that. Again, it's $1 a month for everything. It's not meant to make money. It's literally just tithing the venue, basically,
right, when
for
we're
keeping the lights on for us.
Definitely. We'll also have more details about what exactly that entails too. I know you mentioned the passport. We will.
Yeah, the passport is gonna. It's Patreon. It's under my name, Thomas Negovan. But when the Patreon will be ready, I mean, define ready. It's open, but it's embarrassing.
We're going to be revamping it,
yeah.
and we'll.
There's a lot of design stuff on there. There's just weird things on there now that might not be as focused as when Kat helps me get my shit together. There's weird things like, a logo I gave to Justin Hawkins for his birthday. And it's just like weird.
It's a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's things I'm doing. A lot of stuff with the Caligula film. Mm-hmm. That's a whole other thing. That's another thing that's going to take a lot of time this year, because that's premiering this year. And I've been working on that for 3 years. And so that was another reason that we thought, instead of trying to put out a bunch of books this year, I am going to be, there are a couple that we're pulling across the finish line, but the real focus is going to be Le Pater. But yeah, if you go to Patreon, I think it's patreon.com/Thomas Negovan.
Yeah, the handle's in the description too. And I would also say, Forrest, we'll send out an email if you're interested in getting updates about this stuff. Head to centuryguild.net and just put your email in, because we'll share all of these details when they're ready. Hoping it won't be too long, but
it's so hard with email and everything. It used to be where you'd get an email and it was a big deal, and I had to close out my email account just because of all the spam. Like, I don't see I don't see things. It's just so weird. It's so weird. I'm almost going back to like physical mailings. I was working on designing letterhead for make letterpress letterhead. I'm just going to start writing physical letters again.
I'm training a colony of pigeons to spread my word to
Is
my
that
contacts.
what that is outside your window?
That's what's been going on over here.
And then on just real quick on Caligula, the thing about Silver Screen Virtually, it'll be at a film festival. I don't know which one yet. I'll know in a couple weeks, hopefully. But it's going to be, not as big as Top Gun, and but larger than something that's just going straight to streaming or disc. So yeah, it'll have a theatrical release and all of that kind of stuff.
Join the mailing list.
It's so weird though. Like that's the thing that I don't like about mailing lists is that I'm on mailing lists and I rarely see them. I don't have the answer to this. I'm just saying that's I've just noticed the things that I want to follow. I have to make a list for myself that these are the things that I'm interested in, and then actively go to look at them, because just half of them go into my spam. So much of it floods, and I've kind of over the holidays, I just unsubscribed from a ton of things and just kind of made I made separate mailboxes in my mail account for the things that I wanted to be aware of, that they would go there and go to the top of my thing.
Very smart.
But I feel like you have to do that now because there's just so much out there. I get so much junk, and even my phone now.
Yeah.
I get spam calls every hour. That's very, I don't know.
It's rough. We need to have a salon about how to administratively dodge the issues that come with.
That's why. So that's part of us, though. Seriously, going back to making these physical passports, is I feel like the days of decoder rings and everything. Well, what's the Art Nouveau version of that? And so we made these beautiful little think and read passports that we'll have next week, that are filled with literary quotes, and we're making stamps that for each book, so that if you buy a book, you get a stamp that you put in the passport. And when we do events, we're going to have physical stamps. And so, by the next salon, we'll have those physical ones to show you. And if you're in the Patreon, that's the way you'll get them, is we're doing all of that through the Patreon hub. So that's the way to get them first, is to be on Patreon.
Using technology to root ourselves in the real world.
It's a potted meat product spam. Val Kilmer in what?
It's Caligula, I'm guessing.
No, it's Malcolm McDowell. Helen Mirren. A lot of Helen Mirren. If I hadn't talked about it in here before, the really short thing is just that it was a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. They located all 90 hours of the original footage, and so we did a completely new edit based on the script and cut out all of the nonsense and put the plot back together. And so it's a 3-hour film, and not one frame of it has ever been seen before. And there are there's an extraordinary amount of Helen Mirren that's never been seen before, like entire scenes, entire conversations, entire plot lines. It's just not even the same movie. It's completely, if I did a video as part of our thing for the festival pitches that compared and contrasted the two versions, and they're just not even the same movie. We worked from the original camera negative, we cleaned everything, and then just the plots. Like, you'll watch and there'll be a minute and a half of cackling nonsense in the 1980 version, and then in ours, there'll be 6 minutes of people talking about what the plot is. It's just not even the same movie at all. So that'll be out this summer.
Can you elaborate a little bit for those who are unfamiliar on what the sorry, this is bothering me here, on what the going back to the original plot means in. So
Gore Vidal, I didn't want this to be a whole Caligula thing, but so Gore Vidal if you're not familiar with him, he was a very openly queer writer and one of the greatest literary minds of the 20th century. And he had written a script. Roberto Rossellini, the famous director, had the idea of doing a film based on Caligula's life, wrote a treatment for it, never did anything with it. His nephew then picked up the baton and said, I'd like to do this. Talked to his friend Gore Vidal, said, let's do this Caligula thing. Great. Gore writes the script, extremely historically accurate, very, very homosexual, very unflinching in terms of its sexuality and the horrors of the day and of the character. And they couldn't find financing, and they wound up approaching a friend of Franco's, who's also was very friendly with Gore, was Bob Guccione, the owner of Penthouse. Bob Guccione agreed to fund it. They pulled in Tinto Brass as a director who had made a very bizarre art film called Salon Kitty. And they thought he was controllable. And he wasn't. Bob Guccione had a very different vision than Tinto did, who had a very different vision than Gore did. And so, because Tinto's vision was so different than Gore's, Gore sued to get his name removed from the film. And then as Tinto finished the movie and started to edit it, Bob fired him. So you had a screenplay that was kind of discarded during filming, and then you had someone that filmed everything that then was discarded before the editing. And so on all counts, there was just no one steering the ship. And so then what Bob Guccione did was, I'm trying to be mindful of words that will get flagged on YouTube, but what Bob Guccione did is then after all the filming was finished, is he went and filmed scenes that were adult in detail that then were edited into the movie with no regard for the plot. So you would be watching the characters acting, and then it would cut to something adult in nature, and then cut to something else, and maybe it was the same character, but he was wearing different clothes. And then it's like, are we still in the same scene? Like, the whole thing makes no sense. And so people that love it because it's unprecedented, it's bizarre, it's beautiful. It's this designer was the designer that did Flash Gordon in 1980. So these big, crazy science fiction looking version of ancient Rome, crazy sets. And it's got Helen Mirren, Malcolm McDowell, John Gielgud, Peter O'Toole. But the movie's terrible. So when someone heard I was doing this and would come up to me and say, "Oh, I love that movie," I was always like a little nervous. Like, well, that's highly questionable. But so the thing that happened is everyone thought that all these materials were gone. Malcolm McDowell's been saying for 40 years, I know that we made a good film, and what was released was a complete betrayal. And you watch the footage, and he was right. The actors did an outstanding job. Malcolm's great in this. Helen's great in this. Peter O'Toole, John Gielgud, they're great in it. Everybody's great in it. And when you look at this compared to what was released, it's just mortifying that that's what came out. So the argument of whether or not it's a good movie, I compare it to, if you've seen any of the graphic novels like that Jodorowsky would write, like there's a great one. Well, like the Milo Manara, like the European graphic novels of the 70s and 80s. It's like that version of Caligula. So I think it's fantastic. It's definitely not going to be competing with I, Claudius. It's a weird movie, but the performances are great. There was enough there to build a very clear story arc. And so what Kat was asking for me to explain probably 40 minutes ago before I went off on my tangent is that the thing that we did is I read every interview with the people who were creating it, to really understand where they were trying to plant their flag. And then when we edited it, we went back to Gore Vidal's script and used that as our template, which sounds simple, but they completely disregarded it in the version that was released in 1980. And so in the 1980 version, Caligula is a madman from day one. And in ours, and this is stuff that was written in the notes, like, no, for the first third, Caligula should be like a scared kid. And that's very clear in our version. So it's a very clear, like each hour is very clear in the arc of what happens with the character. So did I answer your question? I answered a lot of questions that weren't
you
asked.
answered a lot. I mean, I'm done. I'm ready to sign up. Good night. Deshazia, thank you so much for signing up, and Forrest as well. I'm so excited. You'll be part of the community on Patreon. I also want to elaborate on what David said. I would like to see what Leonard Nimoy looks like as Caligula, or acts like as Caligula.
Did he play Caligula in the theater thing? Or did he play one of the other roles? Was he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell me you're going to do Jodorowsky's Dune. Oops.
No, but you know what? That's what this is like. It really is. Like when you watch, it was 90 plus hours of footage. They said that they filmed 96, but that we didn't have the shots that they used to make the edit that was released. Again, I don't want to get off on too many Caligula tangents, but the thing that happened is if we were going to need any of that footage, we were going to have to take it from one of the master prints. And as we got further with it, every take, there was a better version or a better shot than what they had used. Like, for example, maybe they used a close-up, but then you look at the wide, and from a storytelling point of view, the wide made more sense. And so as we got closer, I kept my fingers crossed, like, how great would it be if we didn't need any of the footage from the original?
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't a single shot where I thought, oh, I wish we had that. And so that's why I say not one frame has been seen before. There are some shots that are the same, but most of it's very, very different. Mm-hmm. And then the other part is that there's at least an hour that's just never been seen.
Yes.
There's just an hour of at least, if not more.
So on a
this is 3 hours long. It was actually 3.5. It was 3.5, and then we kind of set it to be like that 3 hours was the bar that we wanted to keep it under. I personally enjoy watching it in 3 1-hour chunks. And so I wonder if a streamer wouldn't release it that way, like 3 episodes. Mm-hmm. If I were, when we did do one theater screening to, just kind of see it on the big screen for us, just for the crew working on it. And it's a long movie, it's like, isn't Avatar like over 3 hours? And, it's a lot. But in this era of home, I mean, how many people are going to go see it in the theater? Like that's the event. Like most of us will watch it at home. My advice is pause it at the 1 hour mark.
There you go.
And then again, after the death of Drusilla. You're looking at my shirt. It's a beautiful shirt.
It is I'm not sure what I was looking at in that moment. But I just want to share with everybody tuning in that this is meant to be a discussion.
Ooh,
so
here's little Johnny Lips is in here now.
Johnny Lips is here. Hi, John. John has been doing some amazing work on the.
I heard a rumor that he sent me some things last night I haven't looked at. That's another thing that we did.
Hold on, let me finish what I was saying.
No, hold on, let me.
No, let me.
No, you lie. You go first.
Are you sure? I just wanted to encourage, if anyone has any questions or would like to know more about something, please feel free to put it in the chat. We are keeping an eye on it, and we will.
John, why are you so fixated on Happy New Year? He asked me like 2 or 3 times, "How was your New Year?" I'm like, I don't know what I want to tell you.
He's just.
I went to bed early. Was actually the real answer.
I don't know what to.
She was up playing board games.
Justin has a great.
Well, let me say this real quick. Just the thing that John is doing for the most part that's really interesting. One of the things that made me crazy is you're looking at the budget on this film was like twice Star Wars. It was a huge budget, and they ran out of time. There are scenes that when you look at the daily log, they're filming the scene and someone's painting the column like in between shots to finish it. And so one of the things is that there's some of the scenes, like especially in the grotto with Tiberius, where you're looking at it and you're like, that's plywood. Like you could see in the background that it's just black painted plywood or a piece of fabric hanging. And so one of the things that we did that was a little tricksy is we went in and put visual effects where we did go in digitally and expand the sets. So it's subtle. It's not anything that, if you're not A/B comparisоning them, you won't notice it. But then once you see what we did, you look at the original, it looks like a theater production. And it's just beautiful, like the stones in the grotto. It's so beautiful.
Yes.
But then you look and behind Nerva, behind John Gielgud, you're like, there's lines in that. Like I can see the seams in the boards that they painted or the seams in the fabric. Like there's one where it's supposed to be the sky above the harem of monsters. And there's seams in the fabric. You can see the seams in the fabric that's supposed to be the sky. So things like that. John went in and digitally put the sky in, and it looks beautiful. And again, super subtle. Not anything you're meant to notice, but it does make it feel really, what's the word? Just finished in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so Justin, with the film stuff, funnily enough, the way that we know John is he brought the creature Pango to life. He was one of the artists that worked on building the suit. And then also he did the visual effects to make its spines move and to make its eyes wink. And we have a note from Chandra. I'll do this really quickly. And so he is one of the prime movers in the Western film that we were shooting with Jake Busey. And so that is the movie that has the vampires, designed by Esteban Maroto. And we worked on a little during the pandemic and got shut down with COVID. And so that's something that we're getting back on. But because so much of it is, we're shooting on 16 millimeter, but there's a lot of effects in that movie. And so we're kind of flipping it now and doing a lot of the effects things first. It's a little backwards, but it's going to let us complete it on the budget that we can. So that's the next big thing that's coming up. And then and so Chandra wants me to mention the Caligula book in case anybody here has backed the Caligula book. So the thing that's happened with the Caligula book is a lot like what happened with Le Pater. I started doing the Le Pater book, and then as I started digging, it was like just, you get the iceberg and then you get what's beneath it. And so what happened with the Caligula book is I thought, okay, I'm going to put this out and just put some captions on it and just make it kind of like a gift book kind of thing, really just meant to be a conversation starter. And then the thing is, I was doing so much research and finding so many things in so many archives and meeting people like the woman who was the assistant to the producers on the film back in the 70s. Tons and tons of people. I could go off on that tangent, but the point is I met a lot of people that had a lot of information that was not in the Penthouse archives. And I kept pulling at that thread because I love the research. And it helped me know how to do a great job for Caligula. And so in the course of that, I really realized that it's worth it to the book and for the book to take the time to make it biblical in its definitiveness. And so one of the things that I've been doing is I have these huge calendar sheets And I'm notating, like, is this the day that they went on strike on set? Is this the day that they shot this scene? Is this the day that this actor didn't show up? And the reason that I've been doing that is because now when I look at the pictures, before I was kind of like a voyeur. I was on the set and I was greatly enjoying just being there watching all of this. But now I see it differently in the sense of I know this person was only on set for these 5 days. So I know that they were filming this day and this interesting thing happened. And perhaps the next day they were filming this scene. And so I'm really looking at putting things in a chronological order and making it something where if you just want the book with some fun captions, it's going to still be great. It'll still be that book for you. But if you're a little crazy and a little bit like me, where you really want to get the deep information, I wanted it to reward that. It's such an expensive book to produce. The fact that these photographs haven't been seen ever is so important. They have such a huge mountain of these photos that I want there to be a demand for more of them. I want them, as someone working for a company, I want them to be able to monetize that by licensing images or doing whatever. Well, how do I do that? Well, I make it really exciting that there's this pictorial documentation of what happened. And so I just I needed to finish the film. And I have the book kind of done in the sense that I've got the images and I've got captions, but what I'm doing now is I'm reorganizing it and I'm just making sure that I didn't miss anything. I'm noticing little things, like also things this is important to me. It might not be to a lot of people. I'm also finding out who some of these people are, and I'm falling in love with some of these people. I'm finding out that, maybe this particular actor did this or this or this. There's a guy that was on set that was an important film critic that wrote a bunch of books about Italy that they threw a costume on and put in this role. Like, I want to name him. I want people to look at a caption and not just say, there's this character. I want to, like, if I can find the name of these people, which the time that I've spent, that's what it's allowed me to do. Is that at this point now, I know when I look at these photographs, I know who is that guy. Well, I know who that is. Mm-hmm. And these are things that weren't in their records. And because it wasn't considered important, it wasn't like marketing important to where their marketing department wrote it down. So that's the big thing. So kind of like with Le Pater, where it took a lot longer, but then when it came out, it's like, God, but it's right. It's the best book on Le Pater that anybody could do. Like if Taschen or someone was going to put a Le Pater book out tomorrow, they would have two choices. Either they would completely steal what I did, or they would put something out that wasn't as good, because there's just from the promotional materials with Le Pater to all Muka's quotes about it, to any interview he did about it. Like, I found everything. And again, it was 20 years of searching. And so it was like that with this Caligula book. Is a really, there was a point where I just felt like, God, am I phoning this in a little bit? And I don't phone things in, but I just realized, okay, there's kind of the tier of when we do the little hardcovers where I just try to be entertaining. And I'm like, hey, I know this, let me share this. And then there's that tier with Le Pater, which is, God, I really, really want to not later say, like, I don't want to show someone the book and point and be like, oh, here's a really interesting thing. This actor was also in Godfather 2 or something weird, like, which is, that I knew that's one of the characters, Chericles. Yeah, I just wanted to really, really respect. Oh, thank you so much. That's very, very kind. But that's the thing. So a lot of people, another thing is like, and I love people that are fans of stuff, but thank you, David. I appreciate that. If you're a fan of Caligula, you've been waiting a long time for Caligula news. And so some people have been a little aggressive about wanting the book yesterday. And so one of the things that happened with Le Pater is that I had to kind of tune that out and just be like, there's a thing that Adam Jones from Tool said that I loved. He said, it isn't good when it's done when it's good. And he said that's just their attitude to recording, is that they don't look at it in terms of, we got to get it out for this deadline. It's, you work as diligently as you can. Like I've illustrated for myself that I'm not lazy. I'm not avoidant of deadlines. And I know when to draw the line in the sand in terms of like the law of diminishing returns, and so that's just what we did with the Caligula book. So Chandra, I think, is going to probably pull some quotes from that and use it for people that send her terrible emails and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the book is going to come out and it's going to be beautiful. And the people that have pledged on it Kickstarter are getting lots of kind of secret little snippets and stuff. And so there'll be a lot of that stuff in the Patreon as well, just because it's so much of what's on my plate. And then also, once the film gets released, the people who are funding this have been extraordinary to work for. They've been really, really wonderful. And so, I think there's going to be a lot of things that I'll be given a loose leash on, in terms of saying, hey, I can share this thing or that or whatever. So if you are a fan of film restoration and all of that, it feels boring for me to talk about, but we'll be doing some of that in the Patreon, I'm sure.
I, for one, have become a huge fan of film restoration through this project. And one of the people who has been very helpful is Johnny Lips, who is hopefully still here.
Kat loves doing the digital cleaning. And so it's kind of like Photoshop. So one of the things we had to do with this is we've had to do a frame by frame restoration. Normally you can kind of set a program and go, but the negatives were not well taken care of. The color is great, which is what was important, but everybody in this movie is wearing sequins. So you can't run just like a digital clean on it.
They're either wearing sequins or in water.
Yeah. So it's like, there's always something sparkling somewhere. So you can't just use a digital. And so we literally just had to throw hordes of people at this, watching and giving us frame numbers. And then now, watching it literally just at like 25% speed and catching little things. And so I know Kat really loved doing that restoration. And then the thing that's really funny is now, like if I'm looking and I'm wearing black pants and there's a piece of fuzz on it, my brain is like, I need to clean that, because like anything that I see is a spot. Charles Schneider, hello. I have to tell you, Charles, I was watching some of your stuff last night, and I was listening to the song, is it Animals Eat the Sky? Whatever it is, it was something that you made a short film of, and I loved it. And the music is just so hypnotic and the visuals are so great. But anyway, I don't remember what the name of the thing was, but that was why I couldn't sleep last night. So I was watching that on repeat. So wherever it is, if you see that there's a lot of views last night, that was me watching it. So are there any questions that Chandra has pulled for us or anything?
Not as of right now. Everybody's welcome to share anything they'd like, ask about any projects. I know we went into a bit of a Caligula rabbit hole. Is there anything you've wanted to talk about or share about that you didn't get a chance to?
About Caligula?
No.
Oh.
Anything else?
I mean, just the main thing, like, so Aaron and I have worked on a lot of creative ideas through this, and everything got put on hold because of Caligula. And so, there's things that we're excited about pulling into the world. And then I'm doing some recording, and that's something I'm really excited about. And then the other thing is just, we've got the small hardcover, the expanded edition of the Beautiful Macabre book. that'll be coming out. And then the other thing is that it is kind of ready at this point. We wanted to do a creatures book and a ghost book to kind of go along with Infernal Creatures. And I doubt that those will happen this year. But those are things that I want to kind of get ready to happen. And then the other two things that have been percolating that need to finish is the Ilse book and then a Grand Guignol book. And the Grand Guignol book is one that it's time. That's another one that I've spent probably 20 years researching, like to the point where I've got, letterhead paper from the theater and, lots of correspondence and, just tons and tons and tons of stuff. And one of the reasons I hadn't done that yet is that there's kind of a connection to me between German Expressionism and the Grand Guignol. And I feel like there is a book for me that follows an arc that I could articulate, but would be another long thing. And so I think that I was waiting because I felt like that book was the more important one. But I don't want to not do the Grand Guignol book at the expense of this kind of larger thing. So I think what'll happen is that I'll do the Grand Guignol book, but that there will be another book that gets into the kind of lineage from the Grand Guignol to German Expressionism, the use of the macabre in imagery. And that's kind of what my collection has been. Like, if you look at it, I've got a lot of stuff from the 1890s, from like the Salon Rosequois up through German Expressionism. And that's kind of where I stop. And so that's what I've collected for 30 years now. And I see an arc. It makes sense to me. It makes sense in my head why I like all of this. And so I guess it's kind of like in the same way that I have an idea for an Art Nouveau book that I want to do that's a big overview, but sometimes it's just too big. And so like Le Pater was this massive, massive book, and it's literally about work that, this is about one tiny piece of work, and so trying to do a giant overview can be a little too much. So the Grand Guignol book is, it could happen this year. And depending on how things go, it might. But the thing that I learned my lesson on with Le Pater, and didn't obviously learn well enough on the Caligula book, is that what we do now is wait until I'm finished with the book to bring it to Kickstarter.
Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding, ding.
I mean, with Le Pater, it was one of those things. That book wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Kickstarter. It was me thinking, I like this weird thing that no one's going to be into, and there being such a huge interest that it made me take the time to really sit down with it. And then the more people that I saw were interested in it, the more obligation I felt to do the best job that I could, instead of just making it like an exhibition book. And so, and that's kind of the thing with Caligula. It's not that the response was very strong to the book at all, but it's just thinking like, man, how many movies that are like Lost Helen Mirren films am I going to put out in my lifetime? The answer is probably just the one, and so it's worth really, really taking the time on. And same thing with the Grand Guignol book. There's the Mel Gordon book is amazing. There's another one, I think it's by a writer named Hand, that's really good. And he wrote me once. He was very nice. But kind of in Century Guild keeping, ours will be extraordinarily visually heavy. It's going to be a lot like the Le Pater book. That's what I've been collecting for the decades, is photos and letterhead and
False
adjacent
teeth.
things. False teeth. What? That's not true. Anyway, but yeah, so that's it. So those are the books that we're kind of Yeah, those are the books that are in our future.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, Kickstarter. That's another thing with mailing. There's an artist I like named Skinner. There's a really, really cool guy and does this very crazy 70s freaky art. And he does this horror comic called Skin Crawl. And I saw him posting pictures that he was packing ones to send out. And I was like, how did I miss this? And I looked, there was an entire Kickstarter. I didn't get any mailing. I didn't see any of his posts on social media. It's just, that's kind of when I was realizing, I'm like, God, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard. So that's the thing, is that, you know, we try not to put too much out to make it overbearing, but that's kind of where the Patreon is going to come in. It's like, if any of this weird convergence of, you know, I guess it's a weird little narrow pocket. It's a convergence of like 1890 meets 1970. So you can tell by the wall in Kat's office. And if you, if you like that stuff, the next Kickstarter is going to launch in a week or so. And so we're doing it kind of to promote this, but we're making T-shirts with this sigil, the heart sigil. If you can see it, there we go.
That one.
And instead of doing black and white, we're leaning into color, which is, every time we make T-shirts, we make a couple for ourselves that are like lime green or mustard or orange or things like that. And so that's what we're doing for this campaign, is they're very psychedelic looking. So it's there'll be one safe one and then 3 choices for the more flamboyant and aesthetically adventurous among us.
So
but yeah, if whether you've bought the book before or you get it now, like, thank you so much. It's you know, this really is almost like ministry for me, in the sense of, I feel like sensitivity to aesthetics and sensitivity to history, if you have those 2 things, you can't move through life without being sensitive to other people and the world around you and how we interact. And so I just feel like the more that we pound that drum of not just loving art, but again, the history surrounding it, that it enriches your experience with the art. And in many ways helps you realize that these things that you're thinking or feeling, whether it's international or intimate, that these are things that somebody has thought and felt before. And to me, there's something comforting in that, because then there's places where you can look for solutions. There's a great line in Sting's song, Be Still My Beating Heart, where he sings, I've been through every single book I know to soothe the thoughts that plague me so. And I just think about how much I loved that when I was a kid and heard it. But it's true, you know, like art, music, theater, film, cinema, these are all things that help us understand ourselves and the world we live in. And so, you know, that's why we do this.
Thank you for that.
What are you doing?
I'm looking up what DeShazia shared.
Louis Wayne.
Louis Wayne is okay. Yes, I thought I recognized the name, and I did. So one of Louis Wayne's cats was the inspiration, or one of the inspirations, for the Chuckle Emporium's logo. And
did you know about who Louis Wayne before that?
I didn't know anything,
because I did her logo.
I sent you some Louis Wayne cats
without realizing
visuals, but I didn't know anything about the artist, and I just saw these really cool cats with ruffles.
We have a beautiful Louis Wayne book.
I'd love to read it.
So Grant Morrison was writing a story about Louis Wayne, and he mentioned this, and so I thought, there's this rare book that is on his life that I was going to buy for him, thinking it would be great. He'd have more history. It would be more fuel for him as he was writing this. And then I didn't see him to give it to him. And then the story came out. And so I was like, wow. So I never gave it to him. So it's upstairs. So you should have it.
Oh, thank you.
And I have to be honest, I actually never read the story. But there was also a movie, Benedict Cumberbatch played Louis Wayne.
Oh, that's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character, and he's a very interesting character, and his cats are very, very cute.
They're very cute, very clowny and cute.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, Louis
Great
Wayne.
questions tonight, everybody. Thank you so much. We've got about 5 more minutes, which means if we get into another
We could do one
tirade,
song.
we'll. So I am very excited to share the passport with everybody, and I will keep you all updated about it. In the meantime, what does the rest of your week look like with creative projects?
I am helping get the grading for Caligula across the finish line. And then the other thing that we're doing is that so all we had was the location audio. And when they recorded location audio, they weren't expecting to use it. So there'll be a microphone recording people in a very serious discussion, and in the background you'll hear guys like
Throwing
banging
each other
pipes
down the
and
stairs.
yeah, and things like machinery on set and things like that. And so we've been able to use some of the AI technology to do incredible amounts of cleaning with this. My friend Kevin has been really brilliant with that. And so what we're doing now is really, really going back through and doing a final cleaning on it. I don't want to get off on that tangent because that's a whole other thing. But the reality is that when we made this Caligula release, we thought it was going to have a disclaimer, which is this was made from period materials, basically a lot of excuses for it, because obviously you can't go back and get ADR. People have passed away. And a lot of the scenes when they did ADR back in the 70s, they did the additional dialogue recording for what went on the screen. So these scenes that they didn't use, they never did it for. And so in particular, the footage of John Gielgud in the bath, there's a motor running and it sounded terrible. You could barely hear him, but I was so excited to hear his voice. But it sounded like a wax cylinder recording level of quality. It was horrible. You could still hear him though, even though it was like a little old scratchy telephone line. And so when we started this project, the technology wasn't available. What has happened is that over this period, the technology has developed so much that you can hear him crystal clear, like you had just recorded him in a studio today. What is that?
It's my phone that somehow turned on. Sorry, everyone.
So we've finished the mix for the film. And what we're doing now is just going back through. There's a couple lines where it's still not great in the movie, like because of things happening on set, banging of drums, things like that. And so we're just trying to push it that last little bit. We've given ourselves another 10 days to do that. And there was something else I was going to say. What was it? I don't remember.
How brilliant I am.
You're very brilliant. I appreciate you. But the main thing, just if someone hasn't been here before, if you're watching this online or anything, we started doing these just to kind of be like, oh, if you're coming to the gallery and you're hanging out, that, you know, it's talking about art and things like that. One of the things that I really, really want to do, I will share this for me personally. I'm not a big fan of like talking at people. And so I want to find a way to make this a little more interactive. I feel like everyone's being incredibly gracious by asking questions. But I feel to some degree that it's kind of like being on stage with a microphone. And I don't feel that it illustrates the respect that I have for the people that we're answering the questions of, which is why I want to figure out how to do things where, like, if people are answering questions, if you're in here, that you're kind of in this and come on screen with us. That's another thing with the Patreon is she had pointed out, you get, you know, sometimes trolls or people. She's like, what if it's someone we don't know who they are? I was like, ah, good point. You know, so that's part of the walled garden thing. And then also we'll probably be trying to do things that are a little more structured in terms of the stuff that's on YouTube that's public like this. So in Patreon, we'll do the things like this that are a little bit more disorganized. If you're being generous, you could say unstructured. And then, kind of have the best of both. But everybody who's been here, especially, it's been over a year now that we've been doing these. It's great to see that they get watched later, but it's even cooler when people are kind of here live with us, and especially during the pandemic. It was just such a cool thing, being kind of in the middle of nowhere and being able to still talk about art and talk about these things. So put your thinking caps on for things you want to talk about. Please join us in the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Thomas Negovan. And we try to make it, we'll try to make it more than worth your while. And the money that's in there just gets turned around and given to support other creators. It's not a money-making thing for us.
Right.
And that's it. And then if you don't have the Le Pater book, I'm going to try very, very, very infrequently to do any kind of hard sell. But if you're interested in what we're doing, I respect that the large hardcover was decadent and expensive, which is why we have this beautiful softcover edition that is meant to be far more affordable. And I was really gracious. Michael Moorcock, Roger Dean, Douglas Rushkoff, Steve Kilby, like a lot of people gave us a lot of really great blurbs for this. And I guess that's it. And we're 2 minutes over.
So grateful for our community, including everybody watching this now or later. We will be back very soon for the next salon. And in the meantime, I will let you all know when we have some updates about the Patreon. But in the meantime, please feel free to check it out at patreon.com/Thomas Negovan.
Why are we talking quietly?
I don't know. That's a really good And we will see you for the next salon.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Much.
You guys are all awesome. And we'll see you really soon. Hopefully in Patreon, we'll be doing more chatting in there and keeping this core group
chugging along.
Chatting, just talking. You guys are the best. I appreciate everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.